The United States is in an adversarial relationship with China. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warns China is America's biggest threat, while Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth firmly believes our largest geopolitical foe is communist China. That the Chinese are literally the villains of our generation, and if we don't stand up to communist China now, we will be standing for the Chinese national anthem someday. Lucky for them, the most lethal trillion-dollar-a-year military has surrounded China with over 300 military bases. The Marine Corps is being modified to blockade Chinese shipping. The Philippines is being groomed as a tripwire battering ram proxy. And U.S. Marines are stationed in the island province of Taiwan on Kinmen Island, only 6 miles east of mainland China. Hatred of China is kept alive in Western public opinion by a constant bombardment of U.S. State Department talking points. Mass detention, forced labor, and cultural suppression of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, Tibet's autonomy and religious restrictions, the authoritarian Communist Party of China's lack of democratic elections, a social credit system that doesn't actually exist, lack of free speech, free press and dissent, internet censorship, intellectual property theft, state subsidies for key industries, territorial disputes in the South China Sea, militarized artificial islands, military posturing fueling fears of escalation with Taiwan, a Belt and Road Initiative referred to as debt trap diplomacy, global soft power influence where Chinese investments in foreign infrastructure, media, and education are not considered something that helps other countries, but rather shapes narratives to extend influence at the expense of local sovereignty. According to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, China is waging a technological war, culture war, trade war, and military war. Allowing China to develop would counter Western values, American exceptionalism, and the rules-based order. To maintain world hegemony and ever-flowing profits to the military-industrial complex, the United States always must have an evil enemy and absolutely no peer competitor. China must not be allowed to develop under any circumstances. In order to punish this number one so-called rival, the United States has been implementing measures to slow China's technological development. There are export controls on technologies such as advanced semiconductors and AI chips, pressure on the Netherlands and Japan to restrict export of advanced chip-making equipment, investment restrictions regulating U.S. investments in Chinese technology sectors, scrutiny of Chinese investments in U.S. tech firms, tariffs, of course, all while pushing allies to enforce these restrictions in order to limit China's access to global markets. There is another reason to beat China down. According to well-respected American political scientist John Mearsheimer, war with China is inevitable. Mearsheimer is not alone in this assessment, as just about the entire American ruling class is preparing to eliminate China as a geopolitical competitor. But China's resilience is not to be underestimated. The First and Second Opium Wars, the Taiping Rebellion, the Sino-Japanese War, the Boxer Rebellion, the fall of the Qing Dynasty, the Warlord Era, Civil War, and a Japanese invasion that killed millions. This century of humiliation was a time of great internal turmoil and external aggression, leading to a loss of sovereignty, territory, and national pride, millions in extreme poverty, and an entire country left in rubble. Hardships that are still a recent memory. But China's resilience is not to be underestimated. China is now a leader in AI development, 5G infrastructure, advancing in 6G research, has the world's largest EV market, leads the world in wind energy, manufactures over 70% of the world's solar panels, is a frontrunner in quantum communication and computing, has launched the world's first quantum satellite, built a huge quantum communication network, dominates over 70% of the consumer global drone market, leads the world in smartphone production and global digital payments, has the world's largest high-speed rail network, dominates global shipping ports, has the world's largest state-run education system, literacy rates have soared and millions have been lifted out of poverty, with over 800 million escaping extreme poverty. A nation that was just a pile of rubble during the United States peak of the 1950s achieved all this without firing a single shot or invading a single country. Could you imagine if rather than confrontation with China, there was cooperation? High-speed rail would crisscross America. Mobile networks would be considerably faster. Batteries would last longer. People would be able to purchase electric smart cars for about $10,000. Working-class citizens would have the opportunity to buy a wide variety of low-priced goods and still have a little something left to spend on more than just basic necessities. There'd be cultural exchanges, an amazing space station, and just think of what could be done with all that massive peace dividend.